Hey Osmead, back again. I've come back to Brighton, sit on the beach. It's a bit like rocky Ithaca because there's stones. It's time to finish this story. Chapter 14, the olive tree. When every last suitor was dead, Odysseus turned to his son. Telemachus, call the old woman. Tell her to open the doors. Telemachus called to the old Euryclea. She came hobbling into the threshold stone. She pulled back the bolts and doors, and the doors of the feasting hall swung open. And there she saw her king. He was standing there like a mountain lion, surrounded by the bodies of his enemies. She let out a thin, shrill, cackling cry of triumph. She lifted up her skirt and came dancing into the hall. Odysseus raised his hand. Old woman, hold your tongue. It is an impious thing to exalt and celebrate over the dead. Gloat in silence. The dog just went past there. See it, there it is. Euryclea stood still and lowered her head. Old woman, Odysseus continued, fetch servants and maidservants with buckets, sponges and water. Clean every speck of blood from this feasting hall. Telemachus, you and I will burn the bodies of the dead. Odysseus and Telemachus grabbed the corpse of the suitors by their ankles, dragged them across the hall and down the hill. They built a huge pyre and lit the funeral flame. All that day the heat of the fire's heart consumed the houses of bones. When all had been reduced to smouldering white ash, Odysseus and Telemachus climbed back up the hill. They entered the hall. It was spotless. There was no trace or fleck or speck of blood. Odysseus called Euryclea. Old woman, he said, go upstairs and tell my wife that her husband is home and he is waiting for her. Euryclea nodded. She lifted her skirt and twinkled up the stairs to the bedchamber as though she had forgotten all her years. Penelope was lying fast asleep on her bed. All day she had been sleeping, her heart heavy with sorrow. The old woman said, Madame, Madame, wake up, wake up, wake up. Penelope sat up and rubbed her eyes. Madam, wake up, your husband is home. He is downstairs, he is waiting for you. Penelope looked at Euryclea and shook her head. Old woman, what are you talking about? Has one of the mighty gods or goddesses addled your wits? Euryclea wrung her hands. For pity's sake, woman. Madame, come downstairs. Penelope climbed out of bed. She followed the old woman down the stairs. She saw there was a man standing in the feasting hall. She stood on the bottom step. She looked at him and she said nothing. Telemachus said, Mother, strange cold-hearted mother, your husband is home after 19 years and you stand there and you say nothing. Odysseus turned to Telemachus. Leave us alone. He turned to his servants and his maidservants who were lined up along the walls watching. Leave us alone now. As soon as the last one had left the room, Penelope walked across the hall. She looked into his face and said, Is it you? You are so changed. She reached and touched his cheek with her fingertips. I do not know you any longer. I do not even know what it is, that it is you. You are not the young man I remembered sailing off to fight in distant Troy all those years ago, leaving me standing on the seashore with a baby in my arms. She turned away from him. I cannot sleep with you. I will not share my bed with you. I will tell the servants to move the bed. You can sleep on the other side of a closed door. Odysseus put his hand tenderly on her shoulder and whispered, Penelope, you know you can't do that. You know that I built this hall around an ancient olive tree. You know that I carved our bed. I carved our bed with my own hands from one of the branches of that tree. You know that there is no one who can lift it and set it on the other side of a closed door. Suddenly Penelope turned, her eyes shining with delight. She seized his hand. Then it is you, then it is you, she cried. Nobody knows the secret of our bed, you and I alone. Odysseus looked into her face. She looked into his. Tears of joy were streaming down their cheeks. Suddenly she was in his arms. Penelope, he said, Penelope, my wife, my queen, only now my truly home. That night Odysseus, Penelope and Telemachus sat down together in the feasting hall. With them was Odysseus' old father Laertes, the faithful swineherd Eumaeus, and old Euryclea. Odysseus listened as each of them told the story of all that had happened on the island of Ithaca during his long absence. There were tears at the death of his mother, and there was laughter at Penelope's trick with the loom. There is anger at the outrages of the suitors, and gratitude at the intervention of owl-eyed Athena. When the story had been told, Odysseus refilled his cup with wine and told his adventures on the fields of Troy and his great journey across the broad face of the world. And then he filled his cup again and told of one adventure still left to make, that journey far inland to the place where the oar he was carrying over his shoulder would be mistaken for a winnowing fan. But Penelope put her arms over his shoulder and silenced his mouth with her kisses. Sweet Odysseus, she said, that will be as it may, and as the mighty gods decree. But now you are here, in my arms, at home, in the place where all past and all future melt into present joy. The end. So Odysseus finally does get home. He's reunited with his wife and his son, and all is well in his house, apart from the slaughter of all those suitors. They're burning their bodies and and the trouble that's going to cause afterwards. Anyway, there you go. I hope you've enjoyed the story. As I say, it's 3,000 years old, and everybody knows of this story and the characters in it. And it's a really fascinating one because Odysseus is a really fascinating character, and he appears in lots of ancient Greek myths. And in ancient times, Odysseus wasn't seen as the hero as he is today. They saw him for all the bad bits about him as well. Anyway, I'm going to do a bonus story that goes along with this, but it goes along with the prologue to this story about how Paris was chosen to choose one of the goddesses to hand the apple to, and I'll do that one next. And there you go, and I hope to see you at school soon. All right, take care, and I hope you're all well, and you're all coping with the lockdown. Bye.